Nepo babies are babies and or people whose parents have succeeded in the same field they have. Now, again, some are even better than their parents at it. Peyton Manning is technically a Nepo baby, but it's not like he got his job as a quarterback because his dad was a quarterback. He was legitimately amazing at playing quarterback. And the same with Ken Griffey Jr. in baseball, Barry Bonds. I mean, you can go down the list.
Well, and Peyton Manning supposedly was studying football film like for 8 hours a day when he was 10 years old. But he said,
they're like, that is total bullshit.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
So those are Nepo babies. Nowadays, it's oftentimes used in a derogatory term because a lot of times people can get positions in a field because of who their father is. That's not new. That's as old. That's a tale as old as time. I mean, people. I told you guys the story last week when Bear Bryant was at Texas A&M. There was a tradition there that players were expected to start if their fathers were gigantic boosters to the company. So this is a tale as old as time with Nepo babies. But so in the derisive term, it's someone's only getting a job in a field because that's who their father was successful in that field.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Nico says Madden, who is a 2025 prospect, he's somewhere along the lines of like a Maryland type program. Yeah, we call it the anywhere, somewhere, nowhere kids. He's a somewhere kid. He's not a Nico kid that could go anywhere that he wanted to go. So if Nico says, Madden really wants to go someplace nice, he doesn't want to go to a place like Maryland, would you take Madden? Given the backdrop of college football now, and you could get out of that scholarship if it didn't work out, and we want to talk about some Tennessee Nepo babies that happened, if not necessarily Nepo, then brothers and sisters and connections and recruiting. But if Nico came to you with that request, would you do it?
Yeah, particularly this day and age with scholarships. Where you can get rid of them in a year. Honestly, yes. I get my services from Nico, and then I'm like, okay, now that you're going to the NFL, I don't have to keep Madden anymore. So, peace. But where this is coming from, by the way, I just want to give the news out real quick because the reason we're talking about this, guys, is because Bronny James was just cleared to play for the NBA. So he is staying in the NBA draft. He's not going back to college. Bronny James averaged 4 points last year. Okay, 4 for a 14 and 17 team in USC. And he's going into the NBA draft. This is all because LeBron has said it's his goal to play with his son. So some team is going to draft Bronny James so they can get LeBron signed to them. That's what's about to happen here. It's the most Nepo baby of Nepo baby things that's ever happened in sports because it's really the first time ever we're seeing somebody get drafted, not because they can play, but because of who their father is.
For the record, I've read that he's softened on that and that he's not willing to change teams. And if it happens, it happens. But still, he's able to open the doors.
Well, then why is Bronny staying in the NBA draft?
Say what? I'm sorry.
Why would Bronny be staying in the NBA draft then? Because no team would draft him if it wasn't for his father. He's not ready yet. He's very clearly not ready for the NBA.
Well, yeah, it's a decision. I don't think that anybody's going to take him in hopes of getting his dad. I find these connections in recruiting. Yeah, I find these connections in recruiting very interesting. And I know the Clausen family got really mad at me one time because I compared them to the Leak family. And the point was not that the Leak family, if you remember, Tennessee took CJ Leak to essentially get Chris Leak, who ended up at Florida, but was all ball until James Banks took the field after CJ Leak struggled in Athens, and James Banks almost led them to an upset win over the Bulldogs. So that's where that whole thing went south, or Chris Leak would have been a Tennessee quarterback. They also had a situation in kind of the reverse where Jimmy Clausen, they went to Rick Clausen. Why did they take Rick? They thought they could get Jimmy, the youngest brother, who ended up being the best, but not nearly as good as his rating at the time. He was considered a phenom. Bottom line is, how did those connections work out? How did those recruiting ties work out? Not very good. And I'll take it a step further. They didn't work out from Peyton to Eli. Eli made a business decision and went to Ole Miss. So these recruiting connection things don't work out. So I wouldn't take Madden just because Nico asked, because I'd be afraid something would go south by bringing him into the fold. He's not happy with his spot on the depth chart, with whatever. Then I've got increased opportunities to make Nico unhappy. And that is what I want to avoid, Caleb. So while I want to say yes and be a good guy and take him, just be like, Nico, I'm not sure he can play at this level, and I don't want to do that to him. I'd try to soft.
Well, I think that's being the good guy right there.
Sorry?
I think what you're doing is the good guy. I think taking Madden just so you can keep Nico happy is the cutthroat move. I mean, Tennessee, like you said, took CJ to get Chris, and they took Rick to get Jimmy. And the Rick decision was a disaster because that led to the whole 2005 quarterback controversy. Eric Ainge's psyche was just mentally wrecked because of that. So it just wasn't a good situation. There are some, again, Peyton Manning is a Nepo baby, Dave. We can go back to 94. You've told me the stories. Now, Peyton Manning turned out to be better than Brandon Stewart. We all agree. Do you feel like there's a possibility that the coaches wanted Peyton Manning to be better than Brandon Stewart, though, because they wanted him to win the job, because it'd be a bigger deal from a national perspective and a recruiting name that the Manning name is your starting quarterback over the next couple of years?
I don't even think it got to that point that they thought that David Cutcliffe thought he was that much better. The decision had been made. I don't think I think it was so clear in their minds. Now, it wasn't fans, but so clear in their minds that it was.
But say it was.
If they had to pay NIL money to stay.
Well, okay, but put it this way. Okay, but they recruited Brandon Stewart because they expected to have a competition, right? It wasn't like they took Brandon Stewart not expecting him to compete for the job at some point in case Peyton Manning didn't work out, right?
Yes, clearly. No, I thought
so.
that's
Let's say hypothetically it was close. It was close. It was 50-50. You don't think the Manning name was going to make them lean more Manning at that point and build their future around him?
Couldn't hurt. The program represented by Banks and Jones. Banks and Jones. Play to win. BanksandJones.com. Well, it's because they're Tennessee's trial attorney. You can play to win with Banks and Jones because they'll go to trial. You've heard of other lawyers. They say they'll go to trial and fight for you. They won't. They just want to settle. That's the easiest way out. Well, that's not Banks and Jones, led by T. Scott Jones. They won't settle. They'll go to trial for you. Tennessee's trial attorney. They play to win. Truly, Tennessee's trial attorney when it comes to criminal defense or personal injury. Why settle? It's Banks and Jones. T. Scott Jones. BanksandJones.com. Okay, so let me ask you this. Let's say the situation's flipped and Madden's the older, but he's not as good. Nico's the younger. Would you take Madden to get Nico? Let's say you're in the process of trying to recruit Nico right now, and you think Madden, who's older, this is all hypothetical, could tilt the scales. Would you take him? I want your answer, but I'm going to tell you the answer is absolutely no, because I just gave you all the reasons why those recruiting connections do not work out, and I do not believe they work out. I think they blow up in your face more times than not, and I think that would be the situation there. I think you're better off being honest in the front end and saying he's not good enough to play here.
Okay, actually, no, if Madden's the older brother, I agree with you. See, in this situation, we're talking about Madden, the younger brother. But right. If Madden's the older brother, well, then you can't just take him. You got to start him. And that means you got to start a quarterback who may not be good.
No! That's absurd.
Well, no,
so if you got somebody else sitting on the bench, you're going to start Madden just
No, you're missing my point. This is why you don't take him.
I got you. Okay.
You don't take him because if you take him and you don't start him, you still lose out on Nico, and you've wasted a scholarship in a roster spot.
You put yourself in the same position that Tennessee put themselves in with the League brothers, basically, is what you've done.
Yes, exactly. Now,
CJ, it was obvious CJ had a hitch in his delivery, had a slow delivery. It was obvious he wasn't going to be a great quarterback. Whereas you could look at Chris and say he had a little delay in his delivery. He was going to be really good. I don't think anybody ever saw CJ coming out of college and thought he was going to be incredible.
No, I don't think so either. And by the way, I want to just touch on a few other, because I mentioned Bronny. Also in college right now, the reason we brought this up is Dion and his two sons, Shiloh and Shador, are just talking all types of trash, obviously on Twitter to everybody in college football right now. And I think that, Shador is, yes, is he a Nepo baby playing for Dion? Yes, but let's be honest, he's a heck of a quarterback too. So it's not like he's not a good quarterback, to be fair. Getting back to Tennessee, because people are bringing this up. I mean, the Colquitt family, that's technically like Nepo baby on Nepo baby on Nepo baby that's worked out. Eric Berry was technically a Nepo baby when he went to Tennessee. Now, he was light years better than his father was, and his father was pretty good. But so Tennessee, I mean, put it this way. Legacy players is the nice way of calling, is the nice thing to call a Nepo baby. Doesn't legacy players just sound more fancy? But like Eric Berry's a legacy player. Todd Kelly Jr. is a legacy player. Those guys. Now there are cases though, where what about cases where players played more than they should have, Dave, because of their name? Have you covered that at Tennessee because of their family name, or have gotten opportunities they shouldn't have gotten because of their family name?
CJ Leak shouldn't have ever been first string.
He only started played 2 series against Georgia.
Yeah, but he never been first
Well,
string.
let's be honest. The plan, you and I know what the plan for Fulmer was. The plan was to keep CJ Leak as a backup and then get Chris. They did not plan for Casey Clausen to get hurt in a 6 overtime game against Arkansas. That was not on the books.
That's true. Smoky Mountain Red mentioned Swiper Boy too. You know, the funny thing, yeah, Swiper Boy was Ronaldo Woolridge's son, Orlando Woolridge, right? Or I got it backwards. No, did I get it right?
No, yeah, he was Orlando Woolridge's son. Yeah, Swiper Boy was Ronaldo Woolridge, who was Orlando Woolridge's son. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So, and he liked to make music a little too much. The Berry brothers, if you remember the Berry twins,
Evan and Elliott.
Yeah. How much more pub did they get because they were Eric Berry's brothers? They were good players, but they wouldn't have gotten as much pub. I don't know that they would have been kick return all SEC players.
Evan Berry's the best kick returner in Tennessee football history. I mean, Evan Berry is the best kick returner in Tennessee football history. Okay. There's not a close second. Okay. Elliott Berry, you're probably right.
Well, they're not household names with football fans at Tennessee if they're not Berry's brother. I mean, maybe they should take him, yay or nay. Did you think their careers as a whole were a bit of a disappointment? I mean, you just said best kick returner ever, but I thought you'd get something more out of both of them in the secondary.
Yeah, Evan Berry never did. Well, Elliott moved over to linebacker. Evan Berry never really picked up playing safety. To be fair to him, at the same time, Butch Jones switched coordinators halfway through his career, and Bob Shoop clashed with the entire defensive staff. So there was a lot of things that was happening when he was there. The reason I was setting you up for this, Dave, is I was going to ask you. You think Michael Munoz got the left tackle role that he over Aaron Sears and held on to it because of the fact that his father was Anthony Munoz? Because Aaron Sears was always better than Michael Munoz. As a freshman, he was better.
I do not think that Philip Fulmer would start a guy that was better just because of a name, especially at offensive line, which he held so dear. So I'm going to say that his technique and footwork and all that was better, and he held him off just long enough. I'm going to side with Philip on that one. So, maybe an easy way out, but I'm going to say that he held him off with technique until Aaron just proved he was better.
Well, there is the most Nepo baby move in Tennessee history. You know what it is? You ready?
That? Yes.
The hire of Derek Dooley. That is the most ultimate Nepo baby move because half the qualifications were his dad was Vince Dooley, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I told you, Jimmy Haslam just saw himself in Derek Dooley, someone who's really bad at his job that his dad was so much better than him at. That's what Jimmy Haslam saw, and he thought that they can make it last. But yes, that's Tennessee has a history. By the way, Elix Wilson, remember him? Did they recruit him because of Cedric Wilson's ties?
I would have no doubt that they did, because I remember that's a name I haven't heard in a month of Sundays. He showed up on campus. I was like, eesh. That's not
gotta go to the.
Cedric had special quickness and speed, and
the best hands of any receiver I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't think people understood how special Cedric was because of his size. Now, I tell you what they do need to do is it should be neat when the coaches get some time off, because here in about, I guess, 2000, I don't know, what would it be? 2014, they can take advantage of the Henry legacy, the Travis Henry legacy, and have an entire class signed without having to recruit other players. Well, Travis Henry has few kids.
2014 was 10 years ago, though, Dave.
Oh, yeah, I didn't do my math right. How did they do on that?
I mean, no, that's very true. Yeah, I'm sure Henry's got a few. I can't remember when his last kid came about, but one of them's got to be ready to play running back, right? And
Austin's absolutely right. What about Lane Kiffin? Is Washington and Tennessee, are they in love with Lane Kiffin nearly as much? Does he get the job at Oakland before that even happened in the NFL if he's not Monty Kiffin's son? Austin, you're right. Absolutely.
Well, yeah, I mean, for Tennessee, part of the selling point was that he could bring Monty Kiffin with him.
Yeah.
But I know,
as a matter of fact, that would be the ultimate Nepo baby. You're bringing your dad with you.
That was the ultimate Nepo baby. You are right. That was the largest, most ultimate Nepo baby ever. We're hiring you so we can get your dad.
Yeah, I mean, how's that conversation work? Will you come coach for us? Yeah, I think I'd like to do that. You think you can bring your dad? And you're just like, my dad, my own merit or something like that, or no, I'll just take the job.
But Kevin, like, the thing was, Lane Kiffin, I never saw a head coach make his staff the selling point more than anything else. Shouldn't that have been a red flag, Dave, more than anything?
Yeah, Austin said, I don't know we hire Lane Kiffin if we didn't know his dad was coming in to run the defense. I agree with that. And I don't know that he gets the Oakland Raiders opportunity. As a matter of fact, I'll say 100% not if he's not Monty Kiffin's son, right?
Definitely not. I mean, he doesn't get the
whiff. Not even a whiff.
Not even a whiff. I mean, the only thing we can possibly, particularly, remember when he got the Oakland Raiders job, it was like, yeah, he'd had 2 years as USC's offensive coordinator, but they were putting up record numbers before he took over as offensive coordinator. So, I mean, I guess the selling point of being a Pete Carroll assistant, Pete Carroll was the hottest commodity in football at that time, but yeah, it was his dad, and his dad was the selling point in so many of those jobs. That was an ultimate baby move for Tennessee. For the record, I'm going to defend Ronaldo Woolridge for a minute. Ronaldo Woolridge, no, I'm not going to defend him. I'm going to defend recruiting him. He was a 4-star out of California. And if you guys remember, go back and look at his highlights. He was a very good player and had a lot of talent. If he had any work ethic, he would have been an NBA player. I mean, the guy was 6'8", athletic, could shoot from 3.
It was the classic to me. He was very good at the sport, but he was not very in love with the sport.
I agree. And a lot of people,
if he could choose between being an all NBA type player or being one of the top rappers at that time, he would have chosen the latter.
But he couldn't rap. He could actually play basketball. He was a terrible rapper.
I'll trust you on that.